Introducing ColleidoCast. Oh man, it's the only podcast. There's two people and we talk. There's movies. Oh my god, I don't know, we talk about other stuff too. But really it's most, oh yay, it's starting. 5 seconds, get your fucking popcorn. Oh shit.
Okay, and we're live.
We're live. Oh my god! It's always a game. It's always a crapshoot when this is gonna start.
Yeah, we're 1 minute late. It's so bad. So that that little intro, which is great.
That's our new intro. Yeah, welcome to ColleidoCast, losers. The greatest podcast.
The only podcast worth listening to. Period on the internet, where two morons talk about pop culture on the internet. As always, I am your host, and I won't forget to introduce myself this time, Mr. JT, and with me as always is Mr. War. So, how are you doing, Mr. War?
Hello. Man, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about this first movie here.
Are you really?
It's a real movie. It's an excellent movie.
It's got Bruce Willis in it.
Yeah, it stars Bruce Willis. You might know him from Die Hard, Armageddon, 13 Blocks, I think he was in.
Yeah, I think he's been in all sorts of stuff. I don't.
The Sixth
Sense. So this movie, the first one that we're talking about, and we didn't advertise it because we're gonna spend like 10 or 15 minutes on it because it's like one of the worst movies ever made. So it's called Breach. It's a little sci-fi flick that him and all of his old friends made.
Sci-fi horror movie starring Bruce Willis. With this, I think Red Letter Media said it, where it's like, oh, Bruce Willis, like they said it jokingly that Bruce Willis is in it, so it's a real movie. And this is definitely by far not a real movie. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of movie that was made by students. It just feels like a student film. And Bruce Willis was on set for maybe 2 days. I think that's
what it feels like.
Noticeable. There is a scene where they're all in a room. It's a little tiny room where they're making some moonshine, and there's like 4 or 5 people in there. And Bruce Willis delivered all of his lines, and then Bruce Willis went home to, let's say, party it up with some coke and hookers. And then they came back and they shot all of the other actors' lines later when Bruce Willis was not on set, and you could tell because they would do a close-up on their face. And specifically, and this is one of the most easy things to keep track of, there's these giant green bottles of chemicals behind them. And when Bruce Willis is there, there's 1 bottle. And when they do the close-ups of the other actors, there's 2 bottles. It is such...
near the end of the movie?
Oversight.
Yeah.
Near the middle, I don't know. The whole thing ran together. There were numerous issues where you could tell that they recorded Bruce Willis separately because every shot was him separate from the other actor that was, acting opposite of him. And even more obvious was the hologram shots where it's just like Bruce Willis is standing there and they recorded him telling lines, and then they just project them as a hologram in among the other actors in various scenes. It's so bad.
There was one scene in particular that I think everybody was laughing their butts off because we kind of watched this in server, and we basically just like MSTK 3000 this movie. We just riffed on it. It was great. I kind of wish we could make that into a show, but there's
project. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I'd love it, but yeah. So there's this one scene where he's like.
Is this where we've got our hero climbing through the vents?
Yes. So he's climbing through the vents, and he's like fighting with this other dude in another room. And he's like got him up against the wall, and you can see him like straining and stuff, and then it just goes right back to Mr. Main character, Discount Colin, what's his face, and And you just see him, his little hologram thing pop up, and he's just like, yeah, just take it right, it's fine.
Yeah, the editing there, the editors made a mistake with that sequence. Yeah, it cut back and forth between Bruce Willis giving somebody directions on like through this maze, and then they interspersed it with scenes with Bruce Willis fighting this guy. And I could see how you might do that to try to make the sequence more interesting, but it was totally out of sequence because Bruce Willis was fighting this dude and he was like, I'm gonna kick your ass, and then it's like turn left here and then you're gonna make another left.
Right, yeah,
very
it's just,
very terrible.
it's a mess.
It reeked of low budget, and I actually like watching these kinds of movies because the plot doesn't make any sense. It's not worth following the plot. The plot's not interesting. So I'm just like looking at how they make the movie and some of the practical effects they used. If you want to start pulling some of these up, first is that keyboard.
Okay, let me see if I can.
So for whatever reason, I guess we'll give a brief outline of the plot. Earth is dying. We don't know why. There might be a plague going on. But for whatever
generic doomsday.
Generic doomsday. So the character, humanity is boarding these ships to take them to New Earth, and our hero of this movie, Breach, is this schlubby-looking guy who we call Discount Colin Farrell, and he just looks ugly. He looks schlubby. He doesn't shave his neck. Like, you can have a beard, but you still gotta shave your neck.
Even I shaved my neck beard for tonight specifically.
Even JT and I here have shaved necks. This guy it looks like he just woke up out of bed and is in this movie. And for whatever reason, at one point he's in the control room, and you can see he's got this keyboard here, which this is a Dell keyboard.
This is a keyboard I used in high school, basically.
This is a keyboard that I specifically have, and you can see like the notch here where the circuit board and like the LEDs for cap locks is up here, and then I think they have just a strip of electrical tape covering the Dell keyboard, and you can tell they got it free because it's missing the 1 and the tilde key. Fantastic props division. Let's see, going down, let's jump to that other prop there where you can see that there's power supplies just tacked to the wall and like a motherboard. You can see the little CMOS battery in the motherboard. You can see the power supply, and I drew an arrow where the outlet plugs into for to bring power to your computer. You can see the
pool noodles,
power cables. Yeah. And then those are either pool noodles or they're insulation for like copper pipes that would be running your hot water through your basement. Yeah, just a total hodgepodge of whatever busted electronics
and
they had.
Yeah, and these are like super, like this movie was made 2 years ago, 2020, and you just see like you see things that you saw 15 years ago in your local computer class. Like that's pretty much what they had to work with here. Not to mention some of like their weapon prop. Like everyone basically had like airsoft guns, and let me see if I can find. This
sci-fi aesthetic was just somebody raiding like a local break fix.
I seem to be like the only guy who had a problem with these freaking flamethrowers, but
the CGI was
the CGI.
The
CGI wasn't really the problem to me. It doesn't look like a flamethrower. It looks like something you'd find out of like an N64 FPS game or something. like okay, so this is a flamethrower, and right next to it, luckily I found this shot with the airsoft gun.
A real flamethrower or an airsoft rifle.
Yeah.
How about the scene where the squad is shooting and it like switches between like muzzle flashes and literal laser beams, just inexplicably.
Yeah, there's crap like that, and then I think another thing that we should point out is just how inconsistent the bullets in this movie are.
It's a very inconsistent movie.
Yeah, there's like a scene like the first time they use bullets against these creatures, which are basically just like body snatchers at the end of the day. You see him shooting like just unloading clips into these things, and they're just standing there slowly walking towards them like I don't give a fuck.
Unfazed.
Yeah.
In fact, the script makes a point that one of the characters says bullets only slow them down.
But then later on, one will the main character guy will shoot one like one time, and he just goes flying across
and dies
the hallway.
Yeah, it was awful. The love interest did like a karate maneuver on one, and then shot it once, and like that killed it. Like, yeah, there was no consistency to the danger behind these things.
They just kind of were.
Pull up that last image with Bruce Willis just looking disappointed. And this is great. You can see more like motherboards on the left. On the very left, that is an actual network cable or network cord being suspended by an Ethernet cable that's plugged into the back of it. They just like sticky tacked an Ethernet cable to the wall. Unbelievable. To the right, there's a literal like those black drainage pipes that are always like that you'd have running underneath a driveway. There's actually they use those in multiple scenes, and there's different size drainage pipes. So they went down to a hardware store, bought a bunch of these pipes, got some pool noodles, and got some junk electronics, and that's 90% of the props. Honestly, compared to this stuff, the guns look good. The guns had like those glass sights, and like at least one of them had a little laser light in the middle of it.
I've honestly seen guns that look like that, to be honest, but I can almost guarantee you they were probably airsoft guns just because they're cheap.
I'm sure, or some sort of like specific prop gun that they rented.
Also, like right here in the back, you see this monitor, and there's like this arching sort of dealio going on. That's the hallway that this entire movie is filmed in, basically.
Every scene takes place in either the same hallway or like there's a little room. And then there's a big room. And I think they even reuse the big room for the hospital scene. Because if you look at that hospital scene, all there is like just a 4-inch by 4-inch like printout of a white piece of paper with a red cross in it. And that is the infirmary.
There is one more. I think you sent me a screenshot. Let me see if I can.
This is with the exterior window, and you can see it's like actually like mortared in. Because it's very clear this is supposed to be a spaceship they're on, but all of the walls are cement. The floors are like cracked, gritty tiles. It's obviously like a warehouse or some sort of like underground, like basement area of a facility. Everything looks dirty and gross, even though in the story this is a ship that they literally built this ship to evacuate people from Earth. But
yeah, it doesn't make sense that a super future ship is gonna just look like such trash. It's supposed to be brand
new, and everything's filthy. There's like 300,000 people on this ship that are all in stasis. We never see like the big stasis room with all the bodies. We see some extras stumble past a couple times. But there are basically 15 people on this ship that are not in stasis, and that is our main cast. But of those 15 people, 2 of them, which is our main character and Bruce Willis, are janitors, and they spend all their time cleaning, despite the fact that there's really nobody to clean up after. And they're in like this public bathroom. It looks like a public bathroom, literally in a gas station, and it's got like grime dripping down the walls, and they're just in there cleaning it. Like, who's using these bathrooms? Why are they so dirty?
I don't.
Everything about it's terrible.
Yeah, there's no real exposition about any of that stuff. So it's I just chalk it up to it's a sci-fi movie, and when I say sci-fi, I mean SYFY, that kind of sci-fi movie.
Sci-fi original.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi original with Bruce Willis. It's a real movie, trust us.
One of my favorite parts, I am apparently the only one who noticed this, though it happened multiple times. And throughout the movie, there's parts where the admiral, not the admiral, but like the captain of the ship, he's like the number 2 or something.
The guy who sounds like he's dying every time he screams.
Yeah, the guy who he did his best in his performance, I got to admit.
Yeah, he did. He just sounded horrible every time he screamed.
He did sound horrible. He's probably smoked cigarettes for 90 years, and his voice cracks like it's he's got like an old man grouchy voice. but it cracks like he's a teenager when he screams and gets emotional. But so he's watching things unfold on a bank of TV monitors, like through CCTV type security cams,
Mm-hmm.
and they would film the scenes with Bruce Willis or whomever walking down the corridor, like things are happening, and there was a digital shake effect added to the shot of them walking down the corridor, and then as the guy in the security room is watching it on his screen, it's got the same shaky camera work as
Oh yeah,
though,
yeah.
like they literally just took that scene and then pasted it on to this. And it's hard to explain without
And
showing it. I like.
we even talked about it. It's like that's a digital effect more than likely. They literally just had to turn it off for like one half of that scene or whatever, and then just
Yeah,
transition.
it's something that was so clearly done in post, and it was done near the end because they had already applied the shaky filter to those scenes, and each one of these scenes all had that shaky filter. But apparently they didn't have the original footage. I'm assuming they applied it, and then that was their footage, and that they had discarded. I mean, it reeks of amateur work. I don't know what else I have to say about this movie. It's a zombie movie on a spaceship.
It's
It
basically
sucks.
yeah. It's
It ends with a big, giant, horrible CGI monster, which then also gets burned up, and then there's like a person inside of it. That didn't make any sense. I don't know why that was there.
I don't know. I think that's what most of the budget was spent on was that big old like sort of CG, sort of practical effects.
There were no practical effects. I don't know.
Well,
what you're
no,
talking about.
there was, but
There
it
was,
was
like,
all
one
close-ups. It was all close-up stuff. It was only like a couple of parts. It's like they made the
Yeah.
head and like this little flesh layer thing that they
For
stuck the hand
CGI,
through.
It's like the monsters from like 1999's Spawn. If you remember he went to hell and there was those awful looking, excuse me,
Yeah.
demons. Yeah, it was terrible. They get to the planet. The planet also has these aliens on it for some reason. We don't know where these aliens come from. The person who snuck the alien on the ship, which was the infector that turned people into zombies, he's like, I don't know where this is from.
I will
It's
say-
in the universe.
I will say real quick, the plot of this movie, like this is the last thing I think I have to say about the movie, but the plot literally makes no sense. Most human beings, especially when they know they can keep going, like they just tend towards survival, you know? And the whole like conflict here is sabotage, because for some reason there's some people on board, and I guess these people exist in real life, but no one cares about them. They barely care about themselves. These like nihilist types. Some people on board think, oh well, humanity's had a chance. We blew it. We're going to Earth too. We're gonna screw that Earth up too. Yeah, screw it. We're just gonna kill everybody. It's fine. And man, what a decision to make. How big of an asshole do you have to be to just kill 7,000, a million people, or however many people on board? I don't know how many people are on board. I don't care. And that's kind of like the big reveal is this guy who has been in much better movies than this movie reveals. He's like, I thought it was gonna kill us quick, man. I thought it was.
Has that guy been in other movies? I didn't recognize that actor.
He's been in he was in the last Nolan Batman movie. He was in BVS Dawn of Justice or whatever as one of the bad guys. He's usually just kind of like a silent thug type character. He's got that real sharp face. I'd show him, but I X'd out of the picture.
He had like the hair slicked back.
His hair is always slicked back every time you see him, every movie. I don't know why. He's not a bad actor, but
Man, I'd give this like a 1 or a 2 out of 10. There really is no redeeming qualities unless you want to watch a movie and say, this is what I don't want to do.
This is what I don't want to do with my life. I agree with that.
Every mistake, I think you could have. I mean, I didn't really see any technical mistakes. Well, I guess the editing on that fight scene where Bruce Willis is still talking calmly over the intercom, that was
hilarious.
Editing.
That was so funny.
Hilarious.
Holy crap, dude. That was so easy to make fun of.
the filmmaking itself, I don't feel like had any glaring flaws.
It just wasn't entertaining. It just wasn't. Yeah.
It's like. Yeah, it sucks. The movie sucked.
and I don't know why, but like those hallways and stuff. I kept Okay, so if you've ever seen Cube, it's like one of the best sort of sci-fi horror movies ever made. But
It
two
is.
movies later, like Hypercube was alright, but two movies later, and Zero, the worst one,
I
easily.
feel Zero is way better than Hypercube. We
I
should go back
maybe
and
I yeah
rewatch
maybe
all
we need to
three,
rewatch
and
all
we'll do like
those.
a Cube episode.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I love they're actually Japan's got their own like Cube remake. I just remembered
Hmm.
that, so I'd be willing to check that out too. Maybe that's when we should do it. But anyway, the last Cube movie, if I remember correctly, like the doors in that movie looked exactly like these hallways, and I kept having flashbacks every time I saw these like arched hallway looking things.
It's been I saw Cube Zero probably 7 to 10 years ago.
I,
I've seen the original Cube many times.
it's so good.
I just don't remember that much from Cube Zero, except for saying, because I did at the point, even though this was 10 years ago, I back to back watched all three in a marathon, or at least
I
on
love
three
those
separate
movies.
days.
I actually
And
really like them.
yeah, I just don't remember those hallways. But do you have anything more to add? What do you rate this movie?
I rate it. Watch it. Don't watch it. Who cares? Laugh
I'm
at
not even
it. Go.
bothering with a score.
Go get some friends together. Get some drinks. Laugh at it. Laugh at Bruce Willis and his sad face. And then
Bruce Willis, yeah.
just remember that Nicolas Cage is doing far better than he is right now.
Yeah, one of our live listeners here, Lippy Legs, says that U-Bowl movies are the Academy standard for don't do this. This is pretty much on the same par as. Oh, and actually, Lippy Legs also says Bruce Willis got paid $7 million, and this movie had a budget of 25 million. So he literally got he got almost a third of the budget
Okay.
to appear in this.
So
And the movie grossed $39,000, so it was a massive, massive failure.
I'm going to use that to transition from this terrible movie to a much better movie that had $4 million as the budget.
Yep.
Prospect.
What a fantastic, like, I don't know if this is an indie film. I guess it is.
It's
I don't
basically,
know what you call
yeah,
an indie film. It does have like it was attached to a big publisher, but I think it was made independently. Yeah, this is a great movie. Let's do a deep dive on this. Would you like to start out here?
Sure. So, I guess to start out with I guess we'll start with the plot. Basically, from what I get, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of blanked out in some of the terminology here in the beginning for some reason, but you have this father-daughter combo, and I'm just gonna get a picture of the little logo here, basically, because it's a really cool picture. So this is not the father and the daughter; it's just the daughter. Pedro Pascal is unrelated to the daughter. But there, if I remember correctly, basically, they kind of get like this alert or some kind of notification that there is this really valuable resource at a nearby planet. So they hook off of the spaceship like headquarters that they're on, the space station, I guess. And as they're
Which that spaceship. When we start out here, and they're still up in space, I think that was a miniature.
well, I
There
had
was an awesome like space station miniature, and I'm convinced it's a miniature because they had this great lighting effect where they had, the miniature was stationary, and then they had a light rotating around it, and
yeah.
the shadows were so realistic it couldn't have been a CGI shot, especially because of the CGI that's in this movie.
There isn't a ton.
There's not much. I think the pod on the ground is a digital. Like they have like a landing pod, which they call it a landing pod, but I guess it also still has the ability to take off. But the father and the daughter, we start out in this spaceship, and they make this launch onto this planet. And the spaceship itself, this is one of those movies where you're like, is this whole thing going to take place on this spaceship? Because it's a low budget going in, but the spaceship itself, that set looks phenomenal. It reminds me of if you've ever been on a boat. It's like the inside of a boat. Everything looks practical. Everything looks used.
Hmm.
It's worn, and it's worn in a way that makes sense as compared to Breach, which was its brand new ship that has these like giant halls that are filthy. Whereas this has like seat cushions that are like worn out on the edges and they're frayed. Like this is exactly what a spaceship would look like in the future because things are used, things are manufactured by people. There was like, um, you know, a fire extinguisher on one wall. It it's I can't I can't express how fantastic the inside of this spaceship looked like.
So I'm gonna
And like
show
so few scenes of it. We have the opening scene, and then we have the scene where the daughter retreats back to this ship. I think you could have had more stuff. Uh,
like in the ship.
yeah, in the ship. Just for how much love went into it. I feel like.
So I think I do want to add on a little bit to that. I think one reason that a lot of the stuff looks the way it does is because it's pretty clear that they've spent a long time around these things. So this is like new like neo-futurism kind of stuff. And one thing that I like in this movie too, and I think it's pretty accurate, is I call it a sci-fi western. I don't know if that's what they call it, but that's what I got from it because it's essentially a bunch of like bounty hunters fighting over really valuable
Sure,
resources and
it's a modern day gold rush tale where they go to this
right.
planet to mine, but instead of mining gold, they're essentially like doing this procedure with these alien testicles that grow in this planet.
or sperm thing. I don't know.
Yeah, they look like giant sperms.
I was trying to
And they're
find a
like,
picture
they're
of it.
like,
I couldn't.
and yeah, so these have gems, and the father is actually contacted by a group of mercenaries that were on this planet, and they found a big stash, and they're like, hey, we need someone to come excavate this stuff. And so it's told as it seems like they crash land on the planet, or something goes wrong mechanically, despite the fact. Oh, you know what? I think the girl
They
does
lost.
say that they can't take off.
Well, yeah.
The ship crashes, something goes wrong, and they can't take off with the ship
I
anymore.
want to say they were out of fuel, if I remember correctly.
I don't know if there's something like blew up, and it was like shaking, and the guy's like, "Rrr," and the daughter
Yeah.
just had her face, her eyes closed, and
I do
I'll
remember
tell you what,
that. I do
when they
remember
were
that he.
landing. So, like, I feel like a bigger budget movie, you would have had the scene that showed the pod coming and resting, and we don't have anything like that. We do get a scene out the back, and this actually was a great, like, this is a great, like, little clip. It looked fantastic, but I believe they superimposed royalty-free Creative Commons public domain footage from the NASA space shuttle launching its parachutes, or yeah, the shuttle, or like whatever, some of the stuff that parachutes back down to Earth. Because there was literally one shot where they showed like deploying of the parachutes, and it was like behind the frame of like their pod's window.
Hmm.
And I think that was just such a great use of resources where you have like this limited budget and you still make this planetfall feel realistic. And that shot had such great production value. And like right there is like when I knew that this movie was going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and I think they did a lot more with just very talented people. Again, $4 million budget compared to giving Bruce Willis $7 million to lean in against a wall, basically.
To lean
Most of
against the wall and like drink from a flask, essentially.
Right, and he was
You know
probably
he
actually, he's probably actually
you know
drinking.
He insisted that there would be real liquor in there because he's a method actor or something, but really he's just getting drunk on the job, making $7 million. That's crazy. He got paid $7 million. I can't believe. Limpy, thank you for finding that.
Seriously.
By the way. So yeah, the actors in this movie are great. We have the little girl who I'm almost positive is a lot older than she appears in this movie.
That's how it always goes,
Like
with actors.
she like anytime you see a little girl or even like I feel like movies generally, if there's a kid in it, it's always a little girl, and it's just like, oh God, please no, don't give her any
Please
lines.
don't be a bad actor.
Don't have a scene where she pretends to cry, and it's like how do you avoid it? But that's why I think she was actually much older than she appeared, because she was such a great actor. And there was a good scene at the beginning. So this is before we land on the planet. The dad is like some sort of drug addict. We don't know what it is. It looks like morphine, but
Some
whatever it
kind
is,
of pill.
he takes it out of a dropper and he drops it into his eyes. And then like he
Oh, my bad.
immediately like falls over and starts going comatose, and he like sets the dropper back down, or he sets the like the container, but the top isn't screwed back on, and he like lays down. And I'm like, you're gonna kick that, it's gonna fall over. And I was paying attention to it because I was expecting like one of the next cuts for the cap to be back on, but that doesn't happen. The man falls asleep, and then the daughter comes over and sort of like takes care of him, and she puts the cap back on, and it was like, what a great little detail. But yeah, then they get to the planet, and this is sort of where the story begins wholeheartedly.
And I would love to find a picture of one of the little like planet sperm whale things or whatever. But
Do we have a picture just of like one of the forest shots? Because I don't know where this was
oh
filmed.
yeah, yeah, I'm showing some stuff.
Every inch of this forest is gorgeous. Everything's green. There's just ferns growing everywhere. Every piece of wood has bright green moss growing on it. Because nothing's worse than the movie, like the low budget schlock movies where they just go out into the woods and start filming.
Well, they even kind of do this thing because it's in the story or the narrative rather that they can't breathe in the spores that you can see in this picture here. These little pink sparkle looking things because they're poisonous to them because they're humans and this is not their native habitat. And there's a few ways that they get away from these things, but like you can just see here, and this kind of reminds me a little bit of sort of the visual design in like Love and Monsters that we talked about last week,
Hmm.
where it's just they kind of knew exactly what they were doing to make this place look alien yet familiar, you know?
Yeah,
That's
it was certainly having those ever-present spores, which were digital, and that's about the extent of the CGI.
right,
But
yeah.
it's so true. But it's a great way to be like, okay, this is an alien planet. It doesn't just. It's not like you're like, oh, there's a sycamore tree and there's like, what is obviously Earth vegetation. But I thought it was a great, you know, a great decision story wise, because their filters, like the actual air filters on these suits, are just like actual like either water or air filters that you would buy in a store, that you'd have in your car,
Hmm.
that you'd have in a swimming pool or a hot tub. And like that's another thing where it just looks so real and practical. And these air filters, I think Pedro, what's his name, Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, yeah, he's actually a pretty good actor. He's been lately in the last couple
Oberyn
of years.
Martell from Game of Thrones, who fights the Mountain. He's the Red Viper, I believe, in Game of Thrones. A great character in that show as well. But he's wearing what looks to be like a diving suit.
Yeah, I actually
It looks
showed a
like
picture of that earlier, and
it looks
that's
like an old diving suit, but it works. It fucking works so well.
right.
Because it's not pretending to be like some futuristic, like, we're here in these mechanical robot suits.
Hmm.
It's these are like real people with old shit that they're going on these planets trying to make money. It has the aesthetic. I'm trying like I'm trying to think of what the word to use is, but it just like the whole world feels so complete,
It
and
feels it
every part
feels
about it.
it feels like everything that they're using and everything that like all their tools and everything they're wearing, it just feels right. It doesn't look cumbersome. It doesn't look goofy. These suits actually look like something that I might be okay with wearing if I had to, as opposed to our modern day like astronaut suits and
Yeah,
whatnot.
it looks like what an actual suit would look like, not what a movie prop would look like.
And
I
also,
think that's the distinction. It doesn't look obviously like movie props. It looks like these could actually function the
Hmm.
way they're described as functioning.
And also, real quick, I showed a picture of it earlier. The girl holding the rifle looking thing.
Hmm. The thrower. It's a thrower.
They call guns throwers, and they use some other terminology as well. Like they don't say med kit, they say field kit and stuff like that. One thing I really did like though, just kind of going on with the design here, is the guns to me looked really interesting. Like in that picture, you could see like all the guns have like this weird star-shaped sort of hole from the barrel, and also I didn't notice this until I was looking at that picture. All the bullets are like in this clear cartridge on the side, and they
Did you
just
see when she reloaded that cartridge? So I don't think these are actually projectiles. She takes the cartridge or the magazine or the clip, whatever you would call it, and she plugs it into a machine, and then she hand cranks it. And this is after the death of her father, which we should get into next. But she's back in.
yeah, we're still in the beginning.
She's back hiding in the downed lander pod, and she cranks it, and she like charges up, and she snaps it in, and she pulls it up and shoots the guy. Like it, the visual of the guns definitely gives me a steampunk vibe, but that scene where she hand cranked the recharge, like so, I guess this is some sort of like spark thrower or like arc thrower. I guess that would even make sense with the term thrower.
Yeah.
Like something can throw a charge, and she literally, yeah, that was just a cool little scene, and it gave you some tension too, because she's like cranking it up as like the guys like fiddling around outside trying to get into the lander. Yeah, the design of the guns were super cool. The one guy, so we come across the father and the daughter exit the lander. They're off course because they blew some sort of engine on the way down, and they've got to make their way on foot. And they come across a pair of what would you call these guys? Like cutthroats, you know? They're sort of like
They're basically just
like
I get
bandits. They're
yeah,
bandits.
they're bandits, thugs. You know, they're just making their living day by day.
Mhm.
And they're pretty
Stealing and
ruthless.
robbing people on the road. Yeah, they're extremely ruthless, and that's actually one of my biggest complaints about this movie. So they take the dad hostage, and he negotiates his way, saying, "Okay, listen, I know there's all this money. The three of us, we're gonna kill these mercenaries that called me to come, excavate all these gems."
Hmm.
And they're eventually that he radios to the daughter. They split up, and she's sort of lurking behind with the gun, waiting for an opportunity to jump out, and does confront them. Uh, Man, this is like the big pivotal moment of the movie, really,
More or less,
because
yeah.
you're rooting for this dad and this daughter, uh, and there's a shootout, and the dad is shot, and Pedro Pascal's silent partner, who is this big hulking guy, who never says anything, has got a lot of armor, carries I think it looks like a Gatling gun. I think they called it a Gauss
They call it
rifle.
they call it a rail gun. Pretty
A
sure.
railgun. Yeah, they
Yeah.
either called it a railgun or a Gauss rifle, but it's essentially it's a magnetic propelled weapon. Um, and maybe that's what that charge was. Maybe she was powering up the electrical current to
Could be.
propel the projectile magnetically. Um, and the dad is then executed by Pedro Pascal, and he does so. So there's the shootout. The large man and the dad both go down, and the girl just runs off. And at one point, you can hear the dad is still choking and like
Yeah, this
struggling for breath.
this part definitely made you not like I
Exactly.
I don't
It
even
makes
remember
you
the
not
character's
like
name,
him.
but
His name
Pedro.
is Ezra. Ezra in the movie.
That's right.
And Ezra walks over. The death is not even shown. The death and the dad are both on camera, and he just cold-heartedly executes them with 2 shots. And this was a mistake. This was a mistake in the storytelling of the movie.
I do want to point out real quick though, just
Yes.
how effective the sound design is here, because again, you don't even see him, you just hear him. Like the last time you
Mhm.
see the dad is when he gets shot and he falls over.
And he falls over with like a digital blood splatter burst out
Right.
of his chest. And he
And
falls back.
and this
Like
whole
almost out of frame.
this whole movie, there's scenes where just the sound design alone really makes you feel stuff. I mean, like they
Absolutely, like the
they
breathing.
yeah, the breathing, but like later on, there's a scene that we can talk about where they introduce the automatic scalpel that can cut through
Which
anything.
was actually that was introduced earlier.
Oh yeah,
That
that's
is
right. Yeah,
part
yeah.
of their kit
Hmm.
that they use to excavate. So like the script was just structured so perfectly. Everything is introduced and everything has payoffs. But anyway, so this Pedro kills the dad cold hardly, and you immediately think, one, first of all, they just killed what you thought was the main character, and two, it's done in such a ruthless manner that shows that this guy is such a bloodthirsty killer. Um, and it's so effective in making you hate him, but it's too effective because Ezra then becomes the main character, and he sort of has a redemption arc. But it happens too fast. Like if this were a book, I could see him killing the dad, and then like over a couple weeks of reading this book, or hours of being involved, you could sort of grow to like him as
Yep.
he overcomes adversities and sort of is a help to the daughter throughout the film. And I think one of the reasons is one, the death is off screen, which when the audience is there for the death of the father, all they're seeing is Pedro Pascal. Like that's what your focus is on. The two ways I could see to change this is you either have Pascal Pedro move off screen, and then you have the gunshot so that the whole death is off screen, so you can sort of compartmentalize it, and not think about it as hard. Or you have a scene where he like kneels down next to him and maybe like looks away, and maybe he has a line like, there's nothing I can do to help you, something like, this is going to be quicker, and then he shoots him, and then he has to look away and kill the father regretfully.
I did.
And you turn it into an act of mercy, so he's still the bad guy, but that execution is just so dramatic. It's hard to then 80 minutes later say, okay, this is the good guy. It's a tough sell for the audience to rebound on him so suddenly.
I will say, just from my perspective, I didn't necessarily get the idea that he was like this super bloodthirsty guy. I felt more like Cutthroat.
Cutthroat,
and,
sure.
and you kind of see these characters a lot. Like I hate I hate to say this, but like you see a lot of characters like this in D&D or like in some fantasy novels and stuff. They're just kind of like these rogues that
The
do what
highwaymen,
yeah,
I would call them.
they do what they think they have to do to survive,
Hmm.
and well, honestly just survive for the most part. Some of them are greedy, but and that's kind of how it looked to me. And he sort of has some dialogue later on when he has to get rid of something very important. But basically, he kind of it looks like he thoughtlessly like he's used to having to kill people, and he's sort of
Uh-huh.
numb to it. That's what I kind of got from it personally.
I
But
could I could see that, but again,
it's
I
still
feel
not
like
good. It's still
I
like
feel
it's
like
still
he
a
should
bad.
have expressed, if we want this guy to then arc to be the hero and somebody who redeems himself, you got to I feel like you got to show some bit of regret somehow. Because that's a hard thing to redeem yourself from, just executing somebody without even thinking about it. Just walking for two shots, bang bang, to a character that we already care about, who, despite the fact that he's got issues with drugs, he still cares about his daughter.
Yeah,
He went
it's the
out of his way
father,
to make sure that she wasn't in harm's way
right?
when they came across these bandits. Um, and that's how I would change it. That's really the only thing that I would change in this movie, is just restructure that scene where, where he has to kill the father because he doesn't feel like he has any choice, not just casually stroll over, bam bam, okay, now I'm gonna pillage him and steal what he had on him, which, it's ruthless, man.
Yeah, it's definitely ruthless. Again, that's part of Cutthroat, though. I guess talking about redemption, we'll kind of use that sort of move forward here. She gets back to the ship, right?
Sure, she
And
flees all the way back to their landing pod.
right, and he follows her. She's kind of doing her own thing for a second there, like listening to music and stuff. But she hears the door starting to open from the other side, so she gets her little gun ready, and this kind of leads to what I think personally is sort of the redemption that you're thinking of,
Hmm.
or like I think the writers might have had people like you in mind, where like, okay, this is gonna suck. So Ezra he opens the door and she's got a thrower ready, and she fires one off
Long
in his
barrel.
arm. Whatever, a gun.
It's a long barrel thrower. There's the long
True,
barrel, and then there's like the pistol throw. So she's got the
right.
long one, and she
But
she
like
she wings them.
but like narratively, it's a gun. But so she gets him in the arm, and he he literally just runs over there and just like rips it out of her hand and throws it across the room. It was hilarious,
Yeah.
honestly. But he strikes a deal with her to try to basically get off the planet because they're basically in the same boat. They're both screwed as far as trying to get
Yeah,
back
both are
home.
marooned on this planet,
Right.
and Ezra had it in his mind to steal this landing pod that the girl is in, and she, I think, breaks to him that, like, she was like, oh, I was gonna use you. She's like, I think she gets the gun at some point, and she's holding the pistol on him now, and she says, I want you to take me in your ship, and then like they both sort of realize that neither of them have a way off the planet,
So they
and
now have to basically work together.
yeah, they come up with a plan to go meet up with the mercenaries and take their ship or hitch a ride with them, whatever's possible.
And this is also the part where you see your first field kit, and he gets to use like two of these things because he honestly he just gets beat up throughout this whole movie. But from what I could tell, it basically it basically just like shoots this future foam into your wound, and I guess it's supposed to
It's
like close it.
essentially they took a one of those aerosol bottles of insulation that has like the little pipes that you would spray to fill up cracks with foam. That's essentially what it is, and he takes it and he sprays it in his wound to seal it shut.
I'd love to find a picture for some of this stuff that we're talking about, but unfortunately, it's just like super
You gotta
generic
do
stuff you've
you
already
gotta do
seen.
your homework. Start doing your homework, JT. Start
But
doing your homework ahead of time.
yeah, I'll
This
try.
guy.
I'll try
This is your
better. I'm
first
sorry.
Is this your
I'm
first
sorry.
episode, man?
But yeah. So they use the field kit. They leave basically, and from here we kind of meet. I suppose this is part of their world building. They do a lot of like subtle world building in this movie, or universe building, I guess, because it's space. And we come to find out that there's like this family of religious sort of like natives kind of people, and they got their own suit, and they have like this special tent that I guess is insulated against the spores. Um, and they basically feel like Ezra and the girl's name is C or Che or something. It's like C E
It's
E.
CEE.
Yeah.
C.
So um, and they feel like C has been delivered to them because was it their grandmother died or their mother died?
The mother died. There's like a dead body in the tent with
Yeah.
them.
So they feel like she's been delivered by their god to replace that person,
They
and
try
they're
to buy the little girl off
right.
of Ezra in this scene. They bring a bunch of gems and they're like, for the girl,
Yeah.
for the girl.
And she's like, no, that's cool. I don't want to be a part of this. And she just like
She
flips
fucking
out
books.
and
Yeah,
books.
she
Yeah.
literally bolts
Yeah.
and
And
goes and runs and gets their stash of guns. I like that scene. This is the kind of thing, like, I feel like this was based on a book. I don't think it was. I looked it up. I don't believe there was a book this was based on, but they tell them no throwers, guns, no throwers in the
hmm
religious settlement. And then he says, "Okay, we're going to go deposit them at our discretion and then we'll come back." And then it shows them actually going and like burying these guns. That was like such a great detail of
hmm
something that would happen that you normally wouldn't see in a movie. Like they would just brush past it and go in and deal. And it's like, well, they've got these guns. Why don't they just shoot the people? But everything felt smart and thought out. But yeah, this I guess was supposed to be. Is this what you think was Ezra's redemption? Because he
it's
later rejoins the girl and says, he tells her, "I wouldn't have sold you to them."
no, it's the thing that happened shortly after that.
Okay,
um,
So she runs off and eventually picks Ezra back up on the radio and finds, I guess, what was his tent and where like he's sort of been camping out. Like there's
Yep.
a couple cots in there where him and his big muscle buddy, I guess, were when they're doing weird things all the time. And this is where his wound apparently was never properly treated. In part because of the negotiations falling through with the religious folk. He wanted air filters and treatment.
Well, yeah, they have this.
The dust from his arm.
They have some kind of like magic juice, and that's literally all they call it. They don't
Juice,
tell you what it
yeah.
is. It's just juice, some kind of juice that makes you not infect. Like
You got
you
the
know.
juice. He's like, you got the juice.
And just real quick, I'll just bring this up real quick. You kind of mentioned how a lot of the design and everything in this movie it feels smart, and I actually wrote that down in my notes too. Like this is a smart movie, and one of the subtle sort of world building aspects that you notice. I noticed it personally when Ezra and C were talking the first time. They're sort of kind of speaking in like the Queen's English, as you put it. It's real interesting.
The dialogue. We should definitely talk about the dialogue. Is that what you're talking about? Just the way the characters talk?
Right. Yeah. It's like very matter of fact, not a whole lot of like combination words, And I just thought that was really cool. Because we're here in this future, like this. God knows how far in the future this is. And they're basically talking as if they came from a couple hundred years ago or something. It's real interesting.
The language and the way it feels like the scriptwriter at some point. I mean, it works, but it's like I can imagine the scriptwriter like plugging the whole script into thesaurus.com. There was actually a joke in Friends. If you remember the old sitcom Friends, where Joey. He's like writing like a letter to get high. I don't know what he's writing, but he goes to like thesaurus and like he changes every word with like this big giant word that he obviously doesn't know, and his name is Joey, and he ends the letter. Joey Tribbiani, for those who are unfamiliar with Friends, and he reads this ridiculous letter where every word is 4 syllables, and he gets to the end. And he says, "Baby Kangaroo Tribbiani." Because he substituted his own name Joey with another word for Joey is a baby kangaroo. That's what a baby kangaroo is called, a Joey. Yeah, he's like, oh, I must acquiesce. I'm trying to think of some of the words.
So basically,
it's hard to quote because.
So basically, you're saying you feel kind of like
the language is so unusual.
You feel like kind of like maybe the writer was using a thesaurus from time to time
to
try to.
There's a lot of thesaurus used, but it's like all the words are used properly and they sound smart somehow. It doesn't sound like
it sounds normal. It sounds natural.
Like when you see like high school kids talking and like they're using like language that obviously was written by a middle-aged screenwriter. The way the characters talk, where he's like, it's my wound festers black and vile with the strength of, I don't know. He just it's very flowery language. It's
a good way to put it.
It's definitely flowery. It's poetic. It sounds the dialogue is like the prose is very poetic. It reminds me, in fact, a lot of Robert McCammon because his prose is often reads like poetry. It's like I always describe him as if Stephen King could write very poetic prose, and you were right. I always thought it was just Ezra, but all of the characters talk in this very futuristic sort of
it's like
dialogue or
it's like past futurism or something. I don't know. It's weird.
The lexicon of these people is just. Man, I really wish I had some of these quotes, but it's like you literally can't remember them because it's so unusual.
Because your brain isn't used to remembering, like thinking that way, thinking in those terms, basically.
It's like while this might, I can't even like emulate it. I know he was saying like while this action might call for a vile vengeance brought upon me with wickedness. I, it's like I can't even think of a comparison. The closest I can come to is maybe the opening speech that V gives in V for Vendetta, where he's like, "Verily," and like every word begins with a V.
But the thing is though, like yeah, it's kind of flowery. It's sort of Queen's Englishy,
It feels grand.
but it also the way they talk, they make it feel like casual and natural. They don't make a big deal out of the syllables and it feels like they've been living this way and talking this way their whole life because the acting honestly is just that good, in my opinion.
It is.
And
Hats off to the writers.
yeah, and then one other thing I noticed, and this is just like a tidbit. I didn't catch it at first because handwriting sometimes can just look awful. But C has this little book that she's writing in, and if I remember correctly, she's writing like a fictional novel, just to kind of get out of the world and go somewhere more interesting to her. And if you look at the handwriting, it's a whole nother language, basically, a whole nother alphabet. And I didn't notice it till a little bit later. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like all these cool little details, if you pay
script,
attention, you can really catch it.
That unique script, I noticed that too, and I noticed it actually at the very beginning. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, like that's like a hint, because I had seen this before, and I knew everybody talked funny, and I didn't know if this was like a foreign movie or what. And sometimes like they'll be, even if it's a foreign movie, they'll speak English, but you can see that the text will be like Spanish or like wherever it is they filmed the movie. But I think one of the women we were watching this with did say that it wasn't any language, and she knows like 7 different languages. She said it's a fake language.
Yeah.
And I was watching like even it's actually it's absurd the length they went to create this script, because it only is shown in her book and on some of the dials and like buttons in their little crash pod. There's never like a thing where like they open up a book and he's like, "Oh, I can't read this." She's like, "I know what this is." Like it exists only in that book and on some of the manual. I think she has a manual
She does have a manual, yeah.
for the
Yeah.
the ship, and I think there's also a map. And yeah, it's just like one of those things that they took the time and the care to craft to make this world believable.
And I guess I'll go ahead and say this. Again, I really like this movie, but I do feel like maybe if I'm remembering where we left off correctly, the next scene to me is probably the last like good scene.
Oh, really? So we're at the arm scene. Are we going into like full spoilers here, and we'll just
Well,
so from here we're talking about all
I
the
mean,
rest of the movie.
this whole show is spoilers, but
Spoiler dense.
I mean, I guess we don't necessarily always have to go through the story. It's worth watching anyway. It's a good movie, but his arm's getting infected, and he pretty much he's just pulled her into the tent, right? And he pretty much tells her, "Look, my arm's screwed. It's getting infected. If I don't cut this thing off, I'm gonna die." And he's like, "Here, have this future automatic scalpel that can cut through bone. It's got like 5 different sensitivities and stuff. It's crazy."
Mm-hmm.
And she proceeds to do it, and his acting here is really great. And again, the sound design really helps with this. I forget exactly what I wrote because my phone's off. But
there was like
I wrote.
coming up. Was there like a sizzling?
There was,
sound?
there was sizzling and gushing, all those great sounds. But also the way he was acting about it is how you see like a kid act about getting like a shot or something. He's like real
He's, like,
nervous.
looking
He's
away.
turning away, and he's like, "Oh God, oh God!" And he's sitting there. I kind of referred to this earlier when he killed the dad. He's talking about his right arm here, and he says something along the lines of like, "Oh man, it's been here my whole life. This is my best weapon. It's protected me through thick and thin, and now it's gone forever." And it's just like one of the I think I wrote something like, "Oh, this is like one of the most squeamish amputation scenes I've ever seen," and they barely use any effects. It's all sound design.
One shot where she like starts to making the cut, like it doesn't even show
Yes.
like the amputated
Yeah.
arm with like bleeding, and
It does at the end, but it's like
does it?
far, yeah, but it's like far away. It could have been CG even,
Oh,
just
yeah,
cutting it
I
off.
think that was CG. I think you're right. I think that's actually what it wasn't a very good CG, or
But that's
I
why it
did
was
have
far away,
some I had some problems with that scene actually. Well, the first time I watched it, maybe I just misunderstood. I couldn't tell if he was in pain or not because he puts this band on his arm, and I
Oh,
thought that was to like a nerve block so that he wouldn't feel any pain. But like he really looked uncomfortable during the amputation.
to be
Um,
fair, if you felt pain or not, you know you're losing your arm. Like I
yeah,
can't imagine,
it was a very tense scene for
right.
sure. But something about like the layout didn't work for me. Like he was sitting up with like his arm like laying against his side. I feel it would have been better if he had like it propped up on a table and was like looking away, because like you can't cut through an arm that's literally adjacent to your body. You would cut through it and into Ezra's ribs with that knife. I felt the setup, and he should have known that. He should have been like, okay, like here's my arm, I'm braced here, it's on this table or it's on the cot, like you got to cut through it. But
Yeah.
that's a pretty
Yeah.
minor complaint, I suppose. But
I
yeah, then the rest of the movie, he's got no arm. This is where,
yeah.
if he's a hero, like would be the hero sustaining their mortal wound.
That's by the way, that's the redemption thing I was thinking of. Like the writers thought of people like you and were like, you know what, he lost his arm. It's fine.
Yeah, he made a large sacrifice.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, the sacrifice is in his own interest, because if he didn't remove that arm, he would die. But
also
pity, feelings of pity
yeah.
from the audience.
But also by now, the characters are sort of beginning to finally build a relationship of some kind out of necessity.
They're bonding, yeah.
Yeah.
Ezra's air filter is shot, so he's literally connected with like plastic tubing to her air supply, which was really great for both the story and just like visually. Like they're literally attached to him. He's depended on her wholly for survival.
And this shows you how childish I am. When I saw that, one of the first things I thought of was Rocket Man. You ever see that movie?
With
I can never remember that. No. It was like a comedy movie that came out like mid to late 90s or something.
Not the Schwarzenegger movie?
No. I want to say it was called Rocket Man, and it had some comedic actor that was really popular back then, but he's not popular anymore. And they just had like one scene. It was like the dumbest movie ever. It was so stupid. But there's like one scene where they leave the little spacecraft. They're on the moon, and they're connected, and like the dude starts like farting, and it gets into the other people's helmets. Like I don't know why. Like I just couldn't not think of that one scene. Oh man, but that just shows you how stupid I am. But yeah. So from here, they're I think they already know about some group, right? That is trying to mine these things, and they're out there. It's a real weird setup. They're out there just like
the mercenaries are the ones who called the dad. He was there on a job.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
He was supposed to land even in their encampment, but we had some mechanical failure at the beginning of the movie, which is the inciting incident that sort of sets this whole ball rolling. So they knew that these mercenaries were there, and the mercenaries were expecting a man and a daughter.
So that's what they got.
And that's why they decided to sort of work. They were sort of forced to work together for both of their survival to make it here. So we're essentially now we're in Act 3, which is good because we're at an hour.
But again, like this is a kind of a weird setup, right? The way everything's laid out,
It's a weird setup. They walk down. They approach this mercenary group, but they're just out there like shooting stuff, being drunk, being belligerent.
Yeah.
And we have the phone booth guy, who they're walking into camp, and there's this guy.
Oh yeah.
He's this big muscle dude with like a mask on. He's got like skulls hanging from his necklace or some shit, and he's all pink.
It's Space Immortan Joe, basically.
Yeah, it definitely gives you Mad Max Fury Road vibes with this dude, and they walk past him like there's no explanation. They just kind of look. He looks at them. Like the guy doesn't even move, and I don't know what to call this aside from what's the name of the Japanese, the Yakuza. This is the Simpsons Yakuza joke, where if you remember there's an old episode of the Simpsons, classic Simpsons, and they get embroiled in a plot with the mafia. Everyone knows like that mafia character that's in the Simpsons, and for whatever reason the Japanese mafia is also involved. And at the end of the show, there's this big fight between the mafia and the Japanese mafia, and Marge says, "Oh, Homer, we better go." And Homer says, "No, we can't leave yet. You see that guy there that's not moving? He's just standing there still and quiet. He's gonna do something, and it's gonna be awesome." And they eventually they have to leave, and they get out, and the guy goes, "Hiya!" And Homer's like, "Dole." And that's exactly what this is, where you walk past somebody who's menacing but isn't doing anything, and you just know, like, okay, that guy's gonna do something later, and it's gonna be awesome. Actually, I was a bit let down. All this dude did was like bash somebody's head in with a big boulder.
Yeah, that's what I was
gonna.
I was gonna say. Yeah, he looks real badass, but the payoff is literally
slim.
Yeah, it was just like like he turns into.
He eats some bullets, like he just takes these shots, and he's got like big bleeding wounds on him when he turns around.
But it's no big deal.
But yeah, so we essentially move into the final act here, the climax. I had remembered this as being like one big like shootout scene with a bunch of crazy shit going on. It's not quite like that. It's like they sort of take the guys out one by one, which
so
like apocalypto type stuff.
So
where they sort of fight smart.
Right, yeah. So essentially they get there, and one really cool storytelling thing they do here is because they're all they can connect to each other's comms.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this Russian chick or something. I don't know what she is, but she speaks a different language, and it sounds like Russian. And when she goes to talk to her boss, she doesn't want them to hear her, so she plays like really loud music over the comms. And she just goes over there and just talks to him, and the main characters cannot hear anything they're saying. In
fact, they're like loud. And
right, yeah.
Even the audience, you know what? That gives me Tarantino vibes. And we had mentioned like this movie starts out with like it's got these big title cards with this score that has like this. It has a very 70s feel to it, and it's like the intro to like any Quentin Tarantino movie where you've got the big title cards and the music, and then it even cuts to like the character, the girl, is listening to the music on her headphones, and then like it's then the volume is outside. It's no longer the movie score, but it's like a sound effect in the movie. And this is sort of the same thing where that blending of the audio design with the score and the actual action of the movie, like probably the most famous example of this in Tarantino is where in Reservoir Dogs, Michael Madsen is torturing the cop, listening to music, and he's like singing, and then he walks away, and the music fades out, and he gets the gas can, he comes back in, and the music resumes. That's definitely the feeling you get from the way these scenes work with her turning on that radio. It's such a cool effect, and it's something so small that you would never really think of as adding to a movie.
I guess thinking back a little bit to what we said earlier about spoilers, I'm not really going to worry too much about pointing out like every little thing that happens here, because I think you should just go watch it. It's a good movie.
Should we at least talk about the final sort of kill, which was probably one of the most brutal part of the movie?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. So they sort of take out these mercenaries one by one, and they get chased into the woods by the woman, and she does her trick again where she turns on her radio to sort of like
that was great.
To fuck with them, and this is where our heroes work together in a way that's flawless. He's like, you go flank her, make some noise, distract her, and the plan doesn't go completely. It doesn't go completely to the plan, but the girl tackles the woman, and just as she's like coming upon Pedro, and he gets stuck in the gut with like a bayonet.
Right.
And then while he's like there stuck, he takes that vibro knife, that scalpel, and just like stabs her in the neck like probably 5 or 6 times, and it's so visceral. This again, you've got great sound design, the like the breathing of the characters, like when they're standing and then they start moving, like you can hear them hold their breaths and they like as they're running through the woods, and like the grunts and like the sounds of pain and the as he's stabbing her in the neck. Goddamn, like what great film! Like this is the opposite of Breach. This is
That's kind of why I wanted to
filmmaking.
start. That's kind of why I wanted to start with Breach.
And yeah, that final kill just was fantastic. And then the movie just ends very abruptly. They
Yeah.
steal the ship
Okay.
and
Okay.
they fly
Yeah.
off.
I was gonna say, the ending sort of reminded me a little bit of like the Inception sort of thing, where he spins the top and you don't really know if it's a happy
Really?
or a bad. Yeah, because they get off and they're going, they're flying, but you don't know if they're gonna make it to where they're going because the movie just kind of ends. And
True.
also and also he got stabbed in the gut. You don't know if he's even gonna make the trip.
His celiac artery has been severed for sure. He's definitely got massive bleeding wounds.
Right.
But
So yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of what I got from that.
throughout the movie, there was a ticking clock element where they had to get back to the station in time for the slingshot, which, the way the planets lined up so that they could, use the gravity assist to get back home in a reasonable amount of time. And that was, I feel like, was maybe sort of forgotten or.
Yeah, that
But,
was.
I mean, like, do you have just like a voiceover at the end where it's like, slingshot, now entering slingshot maneuver
Mhm.
into hyperspace in T minus 38 minutes.
Right, and
Like, is that what you do? I guess so.
and I kind of I kind of feel like maybe that sort of adds on to the spinning top gimmick. Like they leave it
Like,
up
did
to
they
the.
actually make it? I mean, I feel that both characters survived. Even if they did miss the slingshot, it would have been like 18 months or something.
Either
Like
way,
the vibe that I got was they would just have been stranded or marooned at this space station for like another cycle, not making any money.
yeah, maybe.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much everything that happened in the movie.
Either way, yeah, like really smart, really well written movie. I don't really have any complaint. Well, I this is a me thing. I did have one complaint, but it's not like a bad thing. Those little sperm things are freaking nasty looking. What a
I
good
mean,
job on all the freaking like just all the practical effects and stuff in this movie. Everything effect wise that they
you
did
know,
was so
there was
effective.
there was an alien at the very beginning when they landed on the planet, and there was some establishing shots of this forest world they were in. And the only two aliens that we saw was a close-up of like this little caterpillar thing, which could have been an Earth caterpillar, because there's a lot of like horned caterpillars and stuff
Yeah,
that look
yeah,
very alien. I don't
yeah.
know if that was CGI or an actual shot. But then there was like this fish thing in the river, and I think I'd like to go back and like look at this shot. There was this, like, you don't even remember what I'm talking about, but it looked like it was like a ball of string with some blue food coloring dripped on it, and it was like set in this stream, and like the strings were just sort of like rippling along, and like that was like some sort of alien fish or something, but it looked so cool. And it looked alien because it didn't look like just a fish. Even though there's some fish that look very alien, it was just like this blob of like stringy
Yeah, yeah,
fin
yeah.
type antenna stuff.
Yeah,
All the forest shots are great. I also wanted to say in this, so I don't know if this takes place, how long of a time frame this takes place, but at the end of the movie, it's now dark, and the final fight scene, leading up to that neck stab, it's pitch black, and it's in these woods that are adjacent to this camp that the mercenaries are, and the lighting in these nighttime scenes is just flawless. Like the glare off of the big glass face masks they're wearing, the shadows. It's not like one of those nighttime scenes, and I am directly referring to every fucking cheapo science fiction movie, and also the final fight scene in Game of Thrones with the White Walkers, where you just can't see anything and just a bunch of dark metaled mess.
yeah.
The fucking all the nighttime shots, you're never confused as to the geometry of things. You're never confused as to where the characters are. You're never confused as to what you're seeing. and the relation to what you're saying to the rest of the world. And goddamn, it's just perfect film. It's great filmmaking. Like, what do you say? It's great filmmaking.
I say 9 out of 10. The movie's perfect.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 easily. Go see it, or hopefully you've already seen it and you just wanted to tune in and have all of your opinions validated by two handsome dudes on the internet.
The most handsome dudes on the internet. Get it right.
The only handsome dudes
That's
on
right.
the internet.
That's right. Yeah, it was great. It was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. Please go watch it. Let us know what you think. It's
available, I think,
everything.
on Netflix, streaming. I don't know where else. I don't know if this has like a Blu-ray release.
You can probably find it on Amazon Prime and rent it for $4, and it's worth it.
Go to Pirate Bay. I don't care. It's a great movie. It's worth. It's 100 minutes runtime, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. Yeah, I think 9 out of 10 from both of us. I really don't have anything more to say.
I guess with that being said, we'll call it a wrap. 15 minutes over, not bad. Not bad, especially when we had to talk about poor Bruce Willis.
The Breach movie we talked about for just about 15 minutes, so we really did get.
Dang, I was like spot on.
I didn't know it worked perfect. I don't know what I have to shill this week. I have been. If you're a writer watching this, if there's like, I know like there's only 3 or 4 people that are still ever gonna hear this part of this podcast. But if you write, publishing.warrenwhiskey.com, I'm trying to compile an anthology of science fiction short stories, and this movie is the exact type of story that I would want to have contributed to this anthology. So. I'm also, there's now a new Twitter account at War Whiskey Books. You can follow me there if you're interested in reading and writing.
You also have a website.
Yeah, publishing.warrenwhiskey.com.
Yep. So check that out for sure. Hopefully we can, kind of keep making content, kind of build this thing up. We got ColleidoCast, we got the publishing thing. We're gonna get Warren Whiskey's podcast back up eventually.
That'll be coming next.
Right, and
late April this summer, Warren Whiskey podcast.
And we're just kind of coming up with things on the fly, things that sound fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, Gab, Getter, and I guess SoundCloud at JTFM, JAYTEEFM. And I guess with that, we'll see you
later,
next.
Losers.
Next.
You're still listening, loser. You should have hung up. I should have turned it off. Go watch some YouTube now. We're done.
I love all of my followers that don't come into my chat and try to get me banned. I love all of you people. I really appreciate anybody who watches this on YouTube or live or whatever. Please keep showing up. It's a good time. I really enjoy this.
Join us in our Discord if you can figure out how to get there. We're at Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. becoming a pretty regular thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to regularly schedule these movies on Tuesday nights, and then we talk about them on our podcast. The recordings are Thursday, so if you want to join us, the podcast, or if you're listening to this podcast live in the Discord, feel free to send messages and commentate from the sidelines.
And please join the movie nights, because the last one that we had, if we ever watch something like Breach, we will absolutely talk over it and have just a great time. But yeah, it's a good time. Anyway, see you next Thursday, 7 o'clock EST PM. Later.
Bye.
Bye.